Every artist develops their own unique style, whether they know it or not. It's one of the beautiful things about creating something, and today I'd like to break it down and understand how Cardists develop a style when creating and practicing their own cardistry moves. I personally believe style can be broken down into two main categories when it comes to cardistry: creative style and performative style. The way I look at creative style is that people have their own unique way of deciding the motions that they attempt when working through a new move or idea. Are they interested in creating structures that have a very visual element to them? Or do they like to weave packets together in a mesmerizing way? Do they like to spread their hands apart and create really widespread motions? Or do they like to keep the packets compact? Do they like to involve single cards in their creation or stick to only packet-based concepts? The way I look at performative style, on the other hand, is how the cardist decides to execute or carry out the idea. Meaning, do they go fast or slow? Are the motions smooth and flowy or quick and choppy? Or even if they're pausing or changing up the speed throughout the performance. Nikolai Peterson has a very unique performative style in the sense that a lot of his moves change up the speed throughout and in a very meaningful way. Take a look at his move Lancelot. You can tell that he does certain parts really fast, allowing him to create a large amount of contrast when he slows it down to the point that the move is nearly stopped. It almost sets him up to make the next phase of the move even more appealing because the anticipation is building for another large motion after slowing down so much. Another example is Noel Heath. He generally uses very minor finger movements to create extremely large and impactful motions. In this instance, he's found a very specific creative style that works for him. Most of his ideas have that wow effect due to the juxtaposition or contrast he creates between his hand movements and the card movements. His moves are often focused on those single moments that are impressive and eye-catching. Sometimes these stylistic decisions are actively being made by the person creating or performing the move, and sometimes they're completely subconscious. For example, let's say I'm a very relaxed person and have also learned a lot of comfy cardistry moves, which essentially means the moves aren't incredibly complicated to do and they feel comfortable in the hands when they're well practiced. Then I'm probably more likely to create moves that trend toward a more relaxed style. I'll probably avoid the cardistry that involves 8 different packets all moving at the same time, causing my brain to explode when practicing. That's more likely a subconscious decision I'm making though, as I wouldn't necessarily even think about creating moves that are speedy and complex in the first place because I'm so attuned to viewing things in a simplistic way. On the other hand, if I saw someone create a move that looks super complex and impressive, I might be more inclined to mimic that ideology and create some complicated cardistry of my own, just to make it look as difficult and impressive as possible. And that's a much more conscious decision to create a very specific style of cardistry. It seems like most people have some sort of balance between conscious and subconscious decision making when creating new cardistry moves. They might make a conscious decision to attempt creating a specific structure or shape, or they might subconsciously create new ideas based on what they've already learned, continuing down the path of what they're comfortable with. The latter can often be more straightforward because you're building on prior knowledge instead of coming up with a visual in your mind and then trying to somehow make that a reality. I often fall into the first camp where I build off things I already know, which is why my creative style is focused on very compact two-handed cuts. I've always thought it would be cool to come up with a structural idea like this one, but I often find myself creating ideas simply by fiddling around, which means I'm usually not spending the energy to conceptualize something before I try it. I just kind of mess around until something cool happens. It's a lot less intentional, but it's a fun way for me to create, and I'm comfortable with it. Andrew Avila is an example of a cardist who probably puts more thought into a specific concept and executes on it, finding the most logical way to get into that specific structure. In his one-handed hexagon move, it's clear that he had a very specific objective to create a certain structure and then thought about the most logical way to accomplish it. I also know people such as Connor have ideated moves while driving in the car just by visualizing them. Since he doesn't have a deck in his hands, he gets home and tries it out to find whether or not his fingers can actually manipulate the cards in the way he imagined. And sometimes it works out. I'd also like to point out the importance of trying your hand at different styles of cardistry to see what you like and continue developing a creative and performative style of your own. Eventually, after a few years of practice, You'll find your groove if you haven't already, and it'll allow you to be more creative with the cards. But don't underestimate the power of focusing on a certain area, as specializing in a specific style of cardistry can help you master those concepts and truly push the boundaries within that type of cardistry. I wouldn't have been able to create many of the more complicated packet cuts I have if I spent most of my time bouncing around between different avenues in cardistry. If I was working on a new isolation and then switching to work on a structural move from there, those are two very different types of cardistry, and it could limit what I'm able to create in either category. But if that's what you want to do and explore everything there is out there, more power to you. That's what's so great about cardistry. It's about having fun and finding expressive ways to mix up these 52 playing cards that would otherwise just be used for simple things like playing card games at the kitchen table. Don't get me wrong though, I don't mind a nice competitive game of poker where I can laugh at my family and friends when I beat them. I hope you got something out of this. If you did, be sure to give the video a thumbs up and hit that subscribe button. It really helps support us. Most of these thoughts I shared are my personal belief and not fact, so definitely comment below if you have a different opinion or even if you share some of these ideas. We'll see you next time.